Sun. A little while after Nexus attacked and tried to kidnap him, Sun and his family were hanging out in the living room of the house. Suddenly they all hear a big boom from the backyard. They all run out and see that Sunset, Dark Sun, Nexus, and Sunset's dragon, the Wither Storm, were there. After trying to fight them off, Sunset singled his dragon to use its fire. Unfortunately, Sun was the only one to survive. He watched as everyone he loved burn and heard them scream. He ran and hid as Nexus was looking for him. He was able to get into his car and drive as far as he could before the car ran out of gas. Eventually, Sun came to a stop next to a sunflower field. He got out of the car and went into the field, then collapsed, crying. Then a sunflower started glowing. A single petal fell onto Sun, and he started feeling warm. He then realized that there was flames coming from the back of his head. He started to panic and ran to the nearest lake, putting his head into it to stop the fire. But as soon as he lifted his head and looked at his reflection, the flame was still there. Soon he found out that he was blessed with the magic of the sun. He could throw fireballs, open portals, and make himself wings made of fire. He started his adventure to Sunset and Nexus Dimension to get his revenge for his family. Moon. This happened way in the past, before the major fight between Sun and Moon. In the bunker after the interview, Moon had an idea. Sun didn't like it, but Moon had to do this. It was the only way to get rid of the one main problem. Moon took the star and made his way to the creator's lab. Sun tried and begged him not to do this, but he didn't listen. What did Sun know anyway? When Moon gets to the creator's lab, he couldn't find him. It was like the creator had just disappeared. Suddenly Moon heard his voice behind him. Moon turned around and blasted the star. He missed unfortunately, and the creator shot him with one of his defense systems. Moon fell to the ground and looked in horror. As one of the creators, tentacles picked up the star. Moon watched as the creator forced the glam rocks to rip Sun apart. But before the creator could kill Moon, he ran. He wasn't able to make it far before breaking down and crying. How could he do this? How could he be so stupid? Sun died because of him, because of his stupid actions. Suddenly, while Moon was sobbing, he felt a throb coming from his arm. He wiped his tears and looked to see that his arm had started to frost over. Little ice spikes growing from the frost. The star's power had attached to him and given him the power to control the cold and ice. But he still couldn't get over what he had done. He stood up and began to walk. As he walks and runs and crawls away from his problems of the creator, said creator continues to destroy the world and increase the birth of their wither storm. Solar. Before he met Luna, after he said goodbye to Sun, everything went black. When he slowly started booting up again, all he could hear was Moon screaming. He was confused at first, but then he opened his eyes, then realized why Moon was screaming. Sun's head was on fire. He started freaking out as well. Moon put the fire out and immediately started yelling at Solar and blaming him for the death of his brother. A few years later, nothing really changed during that time. It was one of those days. The day that Moon wakes up angry and takes it out on Solar. But this time was different. Solar was sitting on the floor facing the corner when Moon came down. Of course, Moon started yelling at him, getting closer, and he did. Once he got within 1 foot away from Solar, he paused. Solar was shaking violently. Moon asked him what the hell was wrong with him and took a step forward. Next thing he knew, Solar was on top of him, stabbing a screwdriver into his chest. Solar finally snapped. He couldn't handle the stress and pressure Moon put on him. It was just too much. Not to mention he still wasn't over the loss of Sun. Eventually, Moon stopped struggling and moving in general. Solar stood up and wiped the oil splatter off his face. Solar brought Moon's body up to his room and set him next to Sun's and sat there staring at them. Then he saw something on wall behind Sun's head. He gently moved it, and there was a weird symbol. He ran his hand over it, and it started to glow. Red and orange strings of light danced up his arm, and a bright flame bursts from behind his rays. Ike, what else to put so moving on? Luna. He became an astral, and because astrals live until they're killed, he outlived all his siblings, but he wasn't able to help keep them alive. So he hated the astrals for that. One night, Luna was sitting in the rundown and rotting daycare. The corpses of his siblings sat up against the wall. Then he just snapped. He went up to space and killed all the other astrals, except for Gemini. Every night, Luna goes up to space and looks for Gemini. And every night he finds and makes them suffer. He also uses his magic to create puppet strings so he can puppet his siblings, pretending they're still alive. In the future, his moon may regain consciousness and wonder what the heck happened, but Luna won't know he's alive and will puppeteer him again. But IDK will see. Nexus. The timeline basically goes as it does in the show. But this time, when Nexus tries to kidnap Sun, they end up talking instead. Well, they yell talk, but whatever. Anyway, Nexus leaves and starts to think, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. I mean, sure, he was still upset at Sun and Luna for making him feel like he was a replacement and not his own person. But they didn't mean to make him feel like that. Sunset heard him talking to himself and Ruin about it. But oh no, that's not what the plan was. Oh well. So when Nexus was resting, aka charging, Sunset went into his room and injected a lot more Dark Star power into Nexus' body. So his body decay increased to the point his arm was completely gone. Eventually, Ruin found out that Sunset was responsible for the increase and told Nexus about it. So Nexus confronted him. They got into a fight, and Nexus told him he and Ruin were leaving and opened a portal. Unfortunately, as Nexus stepped through, Sunset grabbed Ruin and ripped his wires out, causing him to shut down. A parting gift, Sunset said as he tossed Ruin's lifeless body towards Nexus, terrified at seeing now his second person die right in front of him. Nexus closed the portal and stood there staring at where said portal had just been. What was he going to do now? Go back to the others? No, they wouldn't take him back. Heck, even Solar said he was better off dead. SO Nexus traveled to a dimension where the universe was dying, really beautiful. Deep blue night sky, bright stars, and a tall white tree in the middle of water. It looked like water. Anyway, he spent the rest of his time there, until a sunny guest paid him a visit. Eclipse. Don't really have much for Eclipse other than he made the star in the new dimension and said, dimension went kaboom. Eclipse and Puppet were the only ones to survive the kaboom, and now Puppet hates him and he feels absolutely terrible. And some of the star's magic stuck to Eclipse, just like with Moon. How they met. Moon. While Sun was searching for the ones who killed his family, he stumbles upon Moon's dimension, finding him in a bundle in a field of grass that seemed to be frozen. After Sun walked over and asked if he was okay, they started to talk, which led Sun to bring Moon with him on his mission. No way he was leaving this poor Moon alone to be killed by the people they both once called friends. Solar and Luna. Before Sun found them, Luna was bored and started looking through dimensions. He found Solar's and went there. Since Solar never met a Luna, the astral had to tell him all about his backstory up till when he was on dimensional Tinder. Solar offered for Luna to bring the corpses of his family to his dimension, and they could stay with him, since his daycare was still sort of up and running. Luna agreed and they became besties. Then Sun and Moon came along. Instantly Sun and Solar clicked, mostly because they were both fire beings with flame heads. Sun told Solar and Luna what he was doing, and if they'd like to join them. They declined, but Solar offered his daycare as a place they can call home. Sun and Moon agreed, and that's how they met. 3. Eclipse. Moon found his dimension, seeing as it was basically destroyed, and there was a floating piece of something. He figured it was Sunset and Nexus. He told Sun about it, and they left to said dimension. But all they found was Eclipse curled in a ball around his star on a floating piece of metal. Sun immediately went over and asked if he was okay. Eclipse told him what happened, and expected Sun to kill him or imprison him for such stupidity. But instead Sun hugged him and asked if he would like to come home with him and Moon. Eclipse, eyes filling with tears, hugged Sun back and agreed. It took a bit to convince Moon to allow Eclipse to tag along, but eventually Sun pulled the "Don't you love me?" card and he agreed. And as soon as they got home, Luna scared the hell out of Eclipse with the face of Luna's Eclipse. Nexus. Now that Eclipse was with them, he told Sun about a dimension Francis took him to a while ago. He said there was a bunch of energy, and that maybe his Nexus and Sunset were staying there. Sun thanked him for the information and asked if he'd like to come with to check it out. Eclipse agreed and they went. Nexus was sitting at the edge of the water, watching the leaves of the tree fly away. Suddenly he hears Sun and Eclipse talking. He turned to look and was immediately punched in the face by Eclipse. Nexus was so confused, so he begged that they didn't kill him. Eclipse was about to punch him again before Sun stopped him and crouched in front of the shaking animatronic on the ground. Sun asked him a few questions and realized it wasn't his Nexus. It was a different one. He also noticed that he was missing his left arm and half his right leg. He asked Nexus what happened and Nexus told him. Then Sun offered to take him home and give him new parts, to which Nexus agreed to, after a lot of Sun convincing him that Sun wasn't going to kill him. Relationships. Solar and Luna. Best friends, sometimes call each other brothers. Luna trusts Solar more than anyone. Sun and Moon, brothers, always say they love each other before the other leaves to do something. Sun and Solar. Sun is like a caretaker for Solar, like helping Solar brush his fire. Yes, they can do that. Have a really close bond. Sun and Nexus. Sun is also like Nexus caretaker. Sun cleans Nexus prosthetics, and Nexus protects Sun, whether it's in a physical or verbal fight. Solar and Nexus. Slowly building a relationship. Nexus sometimes forgets this. Solar never met him and apologizes for the things he did to his Solar. Moon and Solar rarely talk to each other, but when they do it's like they've known each other for years. Moon and Luna hang out from time to time. Moon's still scared of the corpses Luna uses as puppets. Sun and Luna are kind of friends. Luna pranks Sun, and Sun makes him sleep and eat like a mama lol. Nexus and Luna. Nexus is trying to make it up to this. Luna is slowly opening up to him. Solar, Luna, and Eclipse. They hate him and he hates them. Sun and Eclipse. Sun is the only one really trying to make a connection with Eclipse. Eclipse goes to Sun for comfort. Moon and Eclipse. Moon and Eclipse sometimes reach out to each other. Eclipse helps Moon with tech and magic stuff. I finished it, yay. I'm tired, sobs. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Feel free to ask any questions.